Welcome to KO to Prep Area, a podcast dedicated to Dice Masters collectible dice building game. Hosted by myself, Rico, and my trusty sidekick,
JP.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about how to adapt to your opponent's strategies, specifically in how to deal with the Gabi Firestorm deck, and discuss other characters in specific that deal with counters in general. Because we're going to go pretty in-depth on how to handle this Gabi Firestorm deck, this is going to be a two-part episode. Before we get going, though, I just want to again mention that we do now have a Facebook account, KO to Prep Area, and we also have a Twitter account. You can tweet us at KO to Prep Area. We'd love to hear from you. Ideas, comments, feedback, anything you want to ask us, we'll try to address it here on the show at the end. We've also got our podcast downloaded to iTunes, so you can go and subscribe to us directly at iTunes and get the shows as soon as they come out. With that said, though, we do want to talk about, before we get into our Spotlight Character of the Day, a couple recent announcements that Dice Masters has come out with, specifically that they're going to be releasing a FAQ upcoming, which will hopefully clear up a lot of different power interactions that seem to be confusing, kind of clearing all that stuff up. Eric Lang, one of the designers of the game, was recently on another show and was able to answer a couple questions without going into too much detail. The big question that has been on everybody's mind is about how to deal with attacking and blocking characters. Specifically, if a character is blocked and then the character that is blocking him is no longer there, is that character considered unblocked and is therefore able to do his damage, or is that character considered still to be blocked? Eric specifically answered that question, and he said that the ruling is going to be once blocked, always blocked. So regardless of whether or not that die that was already there blocking him is no longer there, that attacker is considered to be blocked, and that damage is not going to go on to the player.
Right, and that specifically would affect like the rare Nightcrawler, who allows you to KO your opponent once he's blocked. So usually, I've incorrectly played him. I thought he was super powerful because you could KO your blocker and then deal straight damage.
Right, we thought you had to block him with two people.
Right.
And that's not the case.
That's not the case. Once blocked, always clocked. There's some other little triggers, I'm sure, in there that allow you to do damage in the attack step. Mm-hmm. But now it's once blocked, always blocked. It doesn't matter if there's no trample damage or anything.
Yeah, like it makes psychics even a little bit more powerful in this case, because if you block with them and they somehow just get wiped off the board,
right.
Hey,
still damage is not done.
They still absorbed the damage for you, and they went to your KO to Prep Area then.
Right.
So with that said, let's go ahead and get into our Spotlight Characters of the Day. I know JP wants to talk about his favorite winged hero.
Yeah, that's going to be Angel, specifically Avenging Angel. His card, he's a 3-cost, chilled. His card states, if Angel is blocked but is not knocked out, he deals 2 damage to the opposing player. Now, I like this guy a lot because that doesn't sound like the greatest ability just because, it's only 2 damage, and how many times is he going to be not knocked out, stuff like that.
I thought the first one, the unblockable one.
Right.
If Angel, he can't be blocked or something like that, lower cost character?
Yeah, he seemed better, high ground. He seemed better because he states that Angel cannot be blocked by a character with a lower level.
Right.
So the thing is, that's also situational. What if you only roll level 1 Angel, and it doesn't come into play because he can always be blocked? Okay. So that limits his ability. Now, the tactic that I really like about Angel, his levels, level 1 he does 2 damage, level 2 he does 3 damage, and level 3 he does 3 damage. So if you take his damage and you choose not to block him, you're either going to take 2 damage, 3, or 3. Okay? If you do block him and he doesn't die, you take 2 damage.
Mm-hmm.
So you only do 1 more damage. That's not going to scare people, but people are going to have to make the choice of either taking that extra damage or blocking.
Right, and if he doesn't die, then he's there next turn to attack again, right?
And he's there to attack next turn again. And if you do block him, it's forcing you to kill him.
Okay.
Which, once again, is not bad because you KO him to Prep Area.
Right.
He is now another die.
Right.
Now, what makes him so nice is that his cost is low to purchase with a 3, but he also is low to recruit, or to field, I should say. His first level is 0, his second's 1, and his third is 1. So he can come at you every turn. and he's forcing you to KO him, or he can be used as that 5th die to get you those extra dice that's needed.
Right.
Or he can be essentially the blocked character. Now, how he gets really broken is by this new FAQ.
You mean the new ruling?
The new ruling or that's going to be coming out, or that's now clarified. Once blocked, always blocked.
Yep.
There is a card, Distraction, the ability, which has a global ability that says you pay a mask and you can return attacker from the field, or return any attacker to the field.
Mm-hmm.
What's awesome is that once Angel goes out, then you choose to defend, the order of operations, and then globals come into play.
Mm-hmm.
Once you see he's defended, you can pay a shield.
You mean a mask?
A mask, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
You can pay a mask, and then you return him to the field. Well, guess what? Once blocked, always blocked. He just was blocked. And his card says, deal 2 damage to the opposing player.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? He gets to do that again next turn.
Right.
He can drill you for 2 damage every single turn, and there's nothing you can do about other than not block.
Right.
Which means he's doing 2 damage or 3 damage.
Right, so it's guaranteed 2 or 3. It's a nice little loophole.
It's a crazy loophole, and he is super cheap. You can run a bunch of Angels, and he's a speed gamer.
Right.
I'm really liking him right now.
So, yeah, that's a nice combo. You field the Angel, you attack with Angel, they decide to block him with someone that's going to kill him to avoid taking the 2 damage, so you yank him back, and he's once blocked, always blocked. He was still considered to be blocked. He doesn't die, and he gets to ping you for 2.
It's disgusting.
Pretty nice. I like it. The guy I'm going to be talking about today is Reed Richards' rival, Dr. Doom, or as I like to call him, R3-D2. He is a 5-cost shield character, villain, that says, while Dr. Doom is active, each non-villain character gets -1 attack and -1 defense, regardless of how many do. So he doesn't stack on himself. Still, -1/-1. Awesome. What an awesome way to get rid of all those little pesky characters in your opponent's field. They just can't field them. Now, he will also affect your own sidekick dice. You know, specifically, that's kind of what he's designed there for, is to get rid of sidekick dice. He is one of the ways that I get around the Gabi Firestorm. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he can also, even though he gets -1/-1 to your sidekick, which sounds like, oh man, I don't want to play him because he's going to make my sidekicks unfieldable. It's kind of nice. If you have those sidekicks, you can still field them, right? And what happens, as soon as they get fielded, they'll go into the KO. So then they're there for next turn. You can bank your own sidekick dice for the next hand.
Right.
So, whereas your opponent might not see that strategy, because they'll just say, oh, I can't field my sidekicks, so I'm just going to try to re-roll them for energy this round. If you get your sidekicks, you can go, well, what do I have? What can I use this round? Do I want to bank these sidekicks for next turn? You know.
Right.
And so it's a nice little sneaky way to get around.
Yeah, it's nice. He comes in, levels the playing field to the get-go, and then he adds dice, which I think is a fun tactic.
He's expensive. He's a 1/2/3. I mean, I consider that expensive because...
To field.
Right, to field. But he's got good stats. He's a 1/3/6, 2/4/7, 3/5/8, and if there's not any little sidekicks to chump block him, it means that you're going to be forced to block him with a hero, which could hopefully damage, hurt your opponent's strategies. He's a nice counter. I like packing him in almost every one of my builds, just because of that -1/-1. If there's a team based around sidekick strategies, he just nullifies that. And he's only a 5-cost, so he's not a lot to get out there. You can get him out there pretty quickly to adapt to your opponent's strategies, which is what we're talking about today. How do you adapt to your opponent's strategies? Dr. Doom, one of the best ways. R3-D2, great character. Yeah, right? So, let's talk about adapting your opponent's strategies. And how do we do that? Specifically, the headache that seems to be on everybody's mind, according to the boards, is Gabi Firestorm. So, what is Gabi Firestorm? Gabi Firestorm is a deck designed around the super rare Green Goblin, who states, when fielded, Green Goblin deals 1 damage to your opponent for each sidekick in the field. We talked about him a little bit in depth in our last episode, so you can hear about exactly why he's so good.
He was your spotlight character.
Yeah, he was my spotlight character. The basic idea of the deck is that it's quick. It's supposed to be super fast, right? You revolve it around Gabi, who pings you for every sidekick that's in the field, and you load him up with other low-cost characters that just do direct damage.
There's nothing you can do about it. You can't block it or anything like that.
Yeah, basically, you don't care what your opponent has in the field, their characters, because they're pretty negligible. You're just going to play what you want to play, and you're going to just burn through your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Gabi Firestorm deck that I built in specific, now there's going to be different variations, but this is the one that I thought works out pretty well and is very quick, and I've had a lot of success with it. There are a couple drawbacks. The drawback is the fact that for me, the best way to get this deck going is to use 2 super rares, which is hard to get.
Yeah, you're lucky that you have them both.
Yeah, I don't have a starter, but I have all 4 super rares. So
how does that work?
Right? I got lucky there. And I didn't buy a tremendous amount of product either. I just got the sticky fingers. So I built the deck around Green Goblin Gabi, obviously. Then I used the 2-cost Black Widow super rare, Sarnia. I used Angel, Avenging Angel, the one that you just talked about, the 3-cost. 4-cost Punisher, McRook, the common. The 4-cost Human Torch, Johnny Storm. 5-cost Storm, Wind Rider. The 6-cost Professor X, Charles Francis Xavier. And then my 7-cost just kind of is in there as my end of game if I ever get to him. The game never has gotten this long, but if I ever do, I'll play him. The 7-cost Colossus, Pitor Rasputin. And you can look exactly what they do. I'll post pictures of this specific team on our Facebook page so you can see the build.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 force powers that I bring with me are Powerbolt, which is just,
another straight damage.
Yeah, which is just straight up direct damage. And then I pack in Vulnerability. It's just a 2-cost die. It's another low-cost die.
Just to get your team out quicker.
Yeah, if I have nothing else to purchase, once I'm done buying my 4 Gabis and whatnot.
Yeah, because it's all about speed.
Exactly. It's just based on speed.
Right.
And I think I max out Gabi at 4, Black Widow's at 3, Angel is at 3, Punisher is at 3, Johnny Storm is at 2, Storm Wind Rider's at 2, Professor X is at 2, and Colossus is at 1.
And you're referring to dice on each character,
Correct.
Right?
Those are my dice. So that's 20 dice right there. I don't usually need to buy more than Green Goblin and Black Widow. Sometimes I'll pick up a Punisher, but I mean, just relentlessly hitting you with Green Goblin is what does
It's just all Green Goblin, pretty much. Green Goblins and sidekicks.
Right. And I tried to roll my first round. If I roll 4 dice, I'll bank a lightning bolt, and then if I get it, my goal is to try to get 1 sidekick and 3 energy so that I can buy a goblin. And then I put him in my bag and try to do that the first 2 rounds. So by round 3, I have 2 Green Goblins and I have 2 sidekicks already in the field. So hopefully by round 3, I'm fielding a Green Goblin, pinging you for 2, and then swinging at you with my Gabi. Because you attack with Green Goblin every round.
Right.
He's just relentless. You want him to die or go back into your use pile. Because he's only good when he's fielded.
Correct. And
that's just kind of what gets going. And then McRook and his other characters are there to basically handle what they've got in the field. If they got characters, you attack with Punisher, deal another 2 damage, unavoidable, or Black Widow. It's just nasty. It's really easy. It's really basic. Doesn't take a lot of knowledge to really play the deck. It just kind of flows, which is what makes it hard.
It plays itself, and it's just direct damage to your opponent that they can't affect.
Right. So now that we know what the team is, how do you beat it? Right. How do you counteract this team? You're the one who played against it most of the time when we play tested it.
Yeah. You, besides from just grabbing his dice bag and throwing it across the room, which is a good way to stop it.
I think the first time we played, you actually beat it. We were like, this didn't play test well. How the heck did you beat it?
I managed to roll all energy all the time.
Yeah.
No sidekicks. And there's going to be games like that. It's just really odd, but that's part of the game. There's going to be the luck of the roll. And you had the worst luck I've ever seen. Stay away from the casinos, because that was ridiculous.
I could not roll a Goblin to save my life.
Yeah.
I think I rolled... It was awful. I rolled them 4 times and I got energy 4 times.
But barring that single game, it worked really well, and it was very hard to combat without having a specific list of different characters. So we came up with different characters that probably, as a team, would destroy this deck, but would probably lose to every other team out there.
Yeah, I mean, the characters that we're presenting with you today are characters that are against this strategy and are designed to be packed into your existing team. If you try to play all the characters we play as a single team, the synergy is not really great because they all kind of do the same thing.
Right.
And which is just trying to lock your opponent down. Right. Which isn't a great strategy for trying to win because you need a way to win the game yourself.
Correct. And so basically we're just throwing out ideas on how to counter it. And basically, if you add 1 character to your team, it's just going to help in case you run into an opponent who's playing Gabi.
Right.
So build your team the way you want, and then add one of these two characters just to help combat and everything.
The nice thing about a lot of these characters that we're mentioning today is that they're good characters on their own also.
Correct.
So they might end up being on your team regardless, just because they're doing what they're part of your basic team build as it is, and so then you can augment it with other characters specifically designed to beat Gabi Firestorm. That's kind of the idea. When we were talking about how to beat the Gabi Firestorm, we kind of came up with 3 different tactics, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were telling me the first and most obvious tactic is to eliminate your opponent's sidekick dice.
Right. Without sidekicks, then they can't do direct damage from Gabi.
Right. Gabi revolves around sidekicks. Pretty basic strategy. Get rid of the sidekicks, Gabi can't hurt you as hard.
Right.
And then to slow Goblin down completely, like either by preventing him from entering the field or different tactics.
Keeping him there, not allowing him to go back into the bag,
right,
so he cannot be fielded again.
Right.
So just slow the deck down because it's about speed.
Right. And which is the third way. To fight fire with fire, to speed attack your opponent.
Right.
Using other characters. We're trying to build an anti-Goblin Firestorm deck without using Gabi, obviously.
Right.
So,
and the tactics beyond that is you're not going to be able to field blockers, because if you field blockers, it doesn't matter. He's not attacking anybody anyway.
Right.
So you might as well just go all out with attack
mm-hmm.
and just try to kill him before he kills you.
Sure.
And that's the way that speed
right.
deck would work.
Right. So let's start with the sidekick eliminators, right? Mm-hmm. We have listed here R3-D2, Dr. Doom. We have Storm, Wind Rider. We have Venom, the rare Venom. We have Punisher, the rare Punisher. We have the uncommon Human Torch, Johnny Storm. And we have the rare Deadpool. We'll get into specific on each of those here in just a minute, why we like each of those. But let me start with R3-D2. I mean, he's pretty basic. He's got he basically says, while Dr. Doom is active, each non-villain gets -1/-1. Right? You see your opponents playing Gabi, you try to get to 5 energy as fast as you can, field your Dr. Doom, zap his sidekicks, slows him way down.
And he's done. Yeah.
Right? Even if Gabi attacks every turn with him,
right.
Dr. Doom on his lowest level, he's a 1/3/6.
Right.
He can absorb any Goblin attack and not let him get through to damage you. So Goblin comes in, can't do any damage zapping you, and can't even damage you when he attacks because Dr. Doom can block him.
Right. And the idea behind killing all the sidekicks is there's only one sidekick character on the sidekick dice. So it's a 1 in 6 chance of rolling a sidekick die.
Right.
So if he's got 6 sidekicks out already, because Dr. Doom is a 5-cost character, you're not going to get him till around turn 3 or
mm-hmm.
whatnot. So he's going to take you a little while. But the idea is make him roll that 1 in 6 chance every time. Because you roll that twice, you're still not supposed to hit it.
Right.
So if he has 5 sidekicks, hopefully he'll be knocked down to 1.
Right.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Just slow down the direct damage that you're taking.
Exactly.
So he's perfect for that.
Yep, he is. And he's just one character that you need. Mm-hmm. Why don't you talk about Storm?
Yeah, Storm, the Wind Rider, 5-cost mask. She's fantastic. She says, when fielded, you get to re-roll up to 2 opposing characters. Each die that does not roll a character goes into your opponent's use pile. And Storm gets to deal 2 damage to your opponent for each die moved. Mm-hmm. She can be used in multiple different ways for team, and I think she's a fantastic character, but specifically for this, in killing sidekick dice, it goes back to that math.
Right.
1 in 6.
Right.
So it's better to choose sidekicks rather than characters because that's a 50-50 chance.
I think most people see her and go, oh, this is a great way to get rid of those really big cost characters I don't want to see.
The Thors and stuff that'll kill you in 1 turn.
Which is fine, but there's a 50% chance they're going to come back, so she doesn't do anything.
Right.
She is amazing for getting rid of sidekicks.
She's sidekicks because of that added bonus of 2 damage per character she takes out. Right. In this case, it would be sidekicks. Right. I recommend. So choose 2 sidekicks. They're not supposed to. Chances are they won't. Probability tells you they won't hit those sidekick dice. They're going to take 4 damage each turn.
Right, and those sidekicks are no longer there for Gabi.
They're no longer there. The key word in her ability says that if you do not roll a character, it goes to your opponent's used pile.
Right.
So not only do you get rid of the sidekicks, but even better than the Dr. Doom, which allows him to re-roll them, you don't get to get them next turn.
Right.
They go to your used pile, clogging up that bag.
Right.
Making sure, it takes even longer.
Right.
So she's twofold.
Mm-hmm.
Gets rid of sidekicks and deals damage, speeding up the game for you.
Right. Venom, real quick, he basically is the same thing as Doctor Doom, the rare Venom. Angelo Fortunato, he's 6 cost, and he says all non-fist characters get -2/-2. He's a board wipe for sidekicks, obviously. He also reduces Gabi's attack because Gabi's not a fist; he's a lightning, so he'll reduce Gabi's stats down -2/-2. So it'll it'll reduce one other face for Gabi to come out because Gabi has a 0/2/2 face, which he won't be able to field because Angelo Fortunato is there to reduce him.
That's awesome. So it takes Gabi down to 2 and 3 chance.
Correct.
Excuse me, 1 in 3 chance.
Yeah, 1 in 3 chance. So he gets rid of all sidekicks, and then he also prevents your Gabi from coming out. So he's kind of a two-folder in that sense. Real quick, Punisher Big Nothing. He is a 6 cost also, and he states that when he attacks, he deals 2 damage to each of your opponent's characters. Your opponent can prevent this by paying 4 life.
Yeah, that's cool.
Either he comes in, wipes out all the sidekicks, or he does 4 damage to your opponent.
Right. So, AKA, he's dealing 4 damage to you, because no Gabi deck would ever allow to sacrifice all his sidekicks.
Exactly.
Unless you have 1 sidekick, then you might take the 4 damage.
Right.
But that's a cool way to deal 4 direct damage to this team.
Right. Now, there's the rare Deadpool, the 5-cost Deadpool. Chiyonosaki, I think is how you pronounce his name. He states, when Deadpool attacks, you may assign an opposing character to block him, i.e. a sidekick.
Right.
If he knocks out that character, he deals 2 damage to each opposing character. So, you attack, you force a sidekick to block him, he kills that sidekick, obviously, because every die face is lethal to a sidekick.
Right.
He's got.
Yeah, he's 2 damage on his first level, 2 damage on his second level, and 3 damage on his third level.
Right.
He's also cheap to field, being 0/0/1.
Yeah.
That's
so good.
Level 1, level 2, level 3. So he's really cheap. So his only goal, you gotta pin him against a sidekick. You choose. Oh, guess what? You've got already tons of sidekicks.
If you're going up against the Gabi deck, there's always going to be a sidekick there. There should always be a sidekick there, right?
Exactly.
So you attack the sidekick, you ping everyone else for 2. Get rid of all sidekicks.
And now the nice thing I like about him over the Punisher is the fact that there is no combating this in terms of you don't get the choice. Your sidekick are dead.
Right.
Because guess what? I attack, you must block.
Right.
So, and then it happens, and you kill him.
Right.
Unless you have some kind of crazy global that recruits him back, but usually Gabi and stuff don't try to prevent this. He's a great character.
Right. And then the last one, I guess the last 2, the specific one is Human Torch, Johnny Storm. And he's pretty basic. He goes in the Gabi deck, but he's also an anti-Gabi card, which is funny. He states that while he's active, each time you field a character, Human Torch deals 1 damage to your opponent and 1 damage to target character. Pretty obvious. You ping the sidekicks, you ping the opponent. Right. So you're slowing down his sidekicks and you're reducing his life total at the same time.
Right. And the key thing about that is for each character fielded, so you can do more than 1 damage a turn. That's what's nice. You roll a bunch of sidekicks at him who could be free. You could be dealing out 3 damage a turn.
Right.
So he's very nice.
The other one is a little bit more strategic. He's not he's not as obvious. It's Mr. Fantastic, Brilliant Scientist. It's the 3-cost Mr. Fantastic. The only reason I chose him is just because he's 3-cost. But his basic power doesn't really matter. He gets +2/+2 when defending. That's never going to come into effect, really. What's important about him is his global ability. He's got a global ability, pay a mask, target character must attack this turn. Now, there are other characters that have that same global. The reason I like Mr. Fantastic is because if you've noticed, the other characters that we've been talking about that are anti-Gabi cards are all pretty high cost. 5s, 6s, and whatnot. Mr. Fantastic is a 3-cost die. And you don't even need him. And you can get him to help speed up your other characters, but you don't even need him. You can just put 1 die on him, and you use him for the global ability.
He's just there for the global ability.
You like this tactic. You use it on me all the time.
Yeah, the reason for the global is you force his sidekicks to attack because the point is to kill his sidekicks. So you force his sidekicks to attack, and you either get the choice of KOing them, but depending on your life total, it's better, I believe, to allow it to go through.
Right.
Because if it goes through, then he goes to the use pile, clogs up that dice bag, and instead of giving him possible more energy to recruit some of his more better guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's always beneficial to not allow your opponent more dice than the 4. If you get choices, I think it's a tactic to allow to take damage.
Right.
It hurts because you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to take damage. But if you can do it, but yeah, that's a great thing. it's a great little tactic.
Yeah, and especially like you like to put Beast Mutate 666 on all your teams.
Yeah.
So if you've got him in the field,
Yep.
You're playing against Godly Firestorm, you force him to attack, you block with Beast,
Yep.
you get all the bonuses,
I'll
you get
the
your dice,
bonus, I get the extra dice,
helps you
which
ramp up.
speeds my team up,
helps you get to that,
and slows your team down.
gets to those higher cost characters that help you slow down the Godly Firestorm.
It's a fun global, and I think it's a very fun global to work for many different ways.
There is a power that you can use, Force Beam, which also eliminates sidekicks. I mean, that's pretty obvious. It's just when you play it, it does 1 damage to everybody.
Yeah, it says deal 1 damage to each character, including yours, which, once again, you shouldn't be worried about taking damage because your team necessarily shouldn't be revolved around the sidekicks anyway. So the goal is to kill their guys, but it's only a 3-cost die.
Right.
And so that's what's nice. On its other 2 levels, it has 2 different asterisks. It says, instead, deal 2 damage to each character. And then on the last asterisk, it says, instead, deal 1 damage to each player and 2 to each character. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a little sacrificial lamb, but the idea is you're hurting your opponent more than you're hurting yourself.
Right.
So that's what's nice about this action card. And you can always just take it with you and never buy it, too.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, this could go on any team, theoretically.
Right.
So that's always fun.
So, because eliminating sidekicks is the main strategy on how to slow down Gabi Firestorm, we've obviously spent the majority of our time discussing that specific strategy. Since this is a 2-part episode on how to deal with Gabi Firestorm, on our next episode we're going to talk about the other 2 tactics. Using characters to slow down Gabi, and also using his main tactic against him, which is speed attackers. Who those characters are, and why they are useful to fight fire with fire in that sense. Again, so far, if you like everything that you've heard, if you have any other comments so far on how to deal with Gabi Firestorm or what you're doing, please send us messages at our Facebook account, KO to Prep Area, all separate words, or tweet at us at KO to Prep Area. You can leave comments on our YouTube feed, or again, subscribe to us on our iTunes podcast, and you'll get the information that way. So when we come back with our second part of this, how to beat the Gabi Firestorm deck, we'll also talk about specific other characters that are just great counters in general to your opponent's strategies. Until then, though, remember to
KO to Prep Area.